Joining me on the show to discuss more on the story is Jonathan Barratt, an acclaimed oil expert, acclaimed commodities expert, and he will give us some perspective on how to look at the commodity story going forward from here. Jonathan, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks very much for taking out the time. What happens if a desired output cut is not announced, which is 1 million barrels per day, which I'm told is the quantum that can actually move oil prices?
Good morning. Look, I think at the end of the day, I think the market's sort of looking at 1 million barrels a day. I actually think that it's a reasonable number, but it's not that much. If anything, it'll slow the fall of oil, which we've seen as a result of no decision. So I think they need to do something. From what I am hearing, they are miles apart, particularly Russia. Russia really can't come to that party, mainly because Russia, it's right in their winter season, and that's when things are very slow for them. So I think they're miles apart. Let's see what happens. They did say they'll come out with something today. We'll just have to wait and see.
Oh, absolutely. Jonathan, even if, let's say, an output cut is announced, the dynamics and the politics surrounding the oil market is far from over and far from resolved. Do you think that over the course of the next 6 months, things will still be a bit iffy and uncertain on how the output versus the demand equation for oil is managed? And if so, how would that cap prices? What would be the range that would restrict prices to?
Well, it is quite interesting because Saudi Arabia only came out just a moment ago and basically said, well, they've got no, well, they'll make up their decisions. OPEC will make its own decisions. It'll have no sway from the US. But as we know, there is a lot of sway involved. And also, when you look at where the US is positioned now as a net exporter of oil, it's another major player. But I think the US still does hold a lot of sway with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia obviously has the majority sway in OPEC. So I think it will be quite interesting. But let's put it this way. When you look at OPEC Plus and the US, everyone is producing at record levels. And whilst they're doing that without any restrictions, the market will only assume that that glut will exist if the economies remain weak. So I think we have to be guided by that. In my mind, I think pricing should be, I think it's cheap at these levels, believe it or not. And I think people will try and engineer it just a touch higher, maybe back through that $60, $65 a barrel.
From an India perspective, if you were to put a range to oil prices over the course of the next 12 months, I know you've said 60 to 65 if the output cut comes in, but this is an ever-evolving situation, and I don't think we've heard the last when it comes to managing the output as well as assessing the demand environment into the coming year, given all the slowdown concerns that there are. On the downside, so I would cap the range to 60, 65 as per your estimates. On the downside, what kind of range would you give to the market?
Well, I think when you look at India and we've had a 33% bonus on inputs there, so that's certainly got to filter through to the economy and also then stimulate the economy and stimulate demand. On the downside, I really struggle with prices below US $50 a barrel because there are more concerns down there. Obviously for the producers. When leading 6 to 8 months ago, we had Saudi Arabia saying that anything below 50 is a huge issue for them. They've got a lot of expenses. So when you see prices a lot lower, then you start to see there's more tightening on those supply as we saw before. So I think that as you go lower, more talk, but definitely more cuts.
Okay, my final question to you, Jonathan, as we wrap up discussion on this topic, and the government would be wanting to hear your response on this. For 2019, given that it's an important election year in India, what kind of probability would you ascribe to steep oil prices, and I'm talking 80 and beyond? What's the probability that sort of trade would happen? Just because India would be so sensitive in that case.
Oh, look, I don't see it. I don't see it. I've never seen it 80 and beyond, and you can more than welcome to go through a lot of the scripts which I've done on it. Although there are people that say it, I don't see it. I see we've got a new element in the market, that's US production. So I think whilst we've got that US production which really wants to go to the market, and that's what they're aiming for, I don't think you'll see it up around those levels.
Great to hear that. Jonathan, thanks very much for joining us and giving us your perspective.